Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of New Jersey, 1975. Notice of this meeting was given by sending a notice on Friday, July 18th to the Home News Tribune, stating that a special meeting of the Planning Board will be held on Thursday, July 24, 2014 at 7:30 p.m. in Borough Hall, and by posting said notice on the bulletin board in Borough Hall and filing the same with the Borough Clerk. Here.
Clarkson? Here. Mr. Grossman? Mr. Jessen? Mr. Leefried?
Here.
Mayor Valhalla?
Here.
Councilman Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Hirsch? Mr. Curran? Mr. Erickson?
Here. Declare quorum present. First order of business this evening, Metuchen Parking Authority. Applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan bulk variance and exceptions for the construction of a new American Legion social hall.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, my name is Jim Graziano. I represent the Parking Authority of the Borough of Metuchen. We're here tonight as the owner of the property, Block 145, Lot 13.03. I have with me tonight the chairman of the Parking Authority, Mr. Roseman, and the vice chair, Mr. Defoe. Just one comment before we're going to turn this over. We're consenting to have Woodmont present the application since they work closely with the American Legion as well as the Parking Authority to develop the site plan for the site. But I'd just like to tell the board that we've worked together with the American Legion for quite some time coming up with this plan as well as with Woodmont. I've been the attorney for the Parking Authority for over 12 years now, and I've had business dealings with the Legion, and we've never had a problem dealing with them. And they've been a very good neighbor to the Parking Authority. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to Woodmont and their counsel.
And I'm just going to make one brief announcement for those who were with us last week and for those who have been with us in the past. It's the board's common practice to hear testimony from all witnesses from the applicant and then allow questions. That's the procedure that we're going to be following this evening. So again, we'll take questions from the public after all witnesses have testified.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Jennifer Mazaway. I'm a partner with Genova Burns, Giantomasi Webster in Newark, and I'm very pleased to be here this evening before the board again tonight on behalf of Woodmont Properties, but for the applicant Parking Authority of the Borough of Metuchen for Block 145, Lot 13.03, which is a piece of property located at Calvin Place and Wernick Place in the borough. It is located in the B3 Office Business Zoning District, and the use that we're proposing this evening is the American Legion Hall to be moved to that parcel, and that is a permitted use in the zone. We're seeking to construct a one-story building measuring approximately 4,204 square feet, and that is for use, as we said, from the American Legion, which, as you may or may not know, has been serving the borough of Metuchen and its veterans since 1919. This move will allow the downtown development, which was previously before this board for the Lake Avenue, Pearl Street, and New Street development to move forward. As part of our application this evening, we're requesting a number of variances and waivers from the board zoning ordinance. As far as variances, we are requesting a variance from Section 110-64, which is the front yard setback. We're proposing a 12-foot setback where the ordinance requires 35. However, the adjacent properties on Wernick Place consistently have a 10-foot setback, front yard setback, and those on Calvin Place have a 17-foot front yard setback. We're also requesting a variance for a side yard setback of 8 feet where the ordinance requires 10. Minimum lot size in this area is 7,900 square feet. 10,000 square feet. The existing lot is currently undersized at 7,900 square feet, and so we need a variance of that. Minimum lot depth is 100 feet, where the current property is 78.9. Again, the current condition, but we'll be needing a variance from that. And maximum building coverage of 54%, where the ordinance allows only 40%. In addition, the maximum impervious coverage permitted on the lot is 70%. Our proposal this evening is for 80% impervious cover. However, there is 100% impervious cover on the site currently. So, in fact, our proposal, as will be shown through testimony, is actually bettering the current condition. Also, a variance from 110-110 of the borough's ordinance for awnings and overhangs which extend more than 2 feet from an exterior building wall. You'll also hear testimony regarding a number of a number of waivers that we have on this evening, including on-site parking and tree removal. As far as the hearing this evening, notice of the application was provided 10 days prior to last Thursday's July 17th hearing date, at which time the board made an announcement that no further notice would be required, that our application was being carried to this evening. Notice was given to property owners within 200 feet of the affected property, and was mailed to the newspaper and published on July 4th. We've received reports from...
If I could just interrupt for a second, I would also note that the board provided notice of the special meeting to the papers as required by the Open Public Meetings Act, so there's additional notice as well.
Thank you. We've received reports from the board's planner as well as engineer, and will be prepared to speak to any issues that remain at that point after our review. And with that, I'd like to introduce Stephen Santola, Executive Vice President and General Counsel from Woodmont Properties, who will provide a little bit of background, factual background on the project, and introduce the remainder of our witnesses tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Masway.
Thank you.
You swear affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. First of all, thank you for bringing us back this week on a special meeting so that we can hopefully put a very large bow on an exciting project and move on to the next step. We want to really thank you for your time. I know it's not easy, particularly in July. So as you all may or may not have read the RFP, there was discussion in there about the possible relocation of the American Legion in order to improve the project. And when we looked at it, and when we were putting our program together and becoming very involved in the selection process, we felt that it was extremely important to be able to capture that whole corner as a gateway to Metuchen, as a gateway to the downtown, and even more importantly, you know, we knew that it would be bringing in and introducing a new setup, probably not working great for the Legion with the parking in the deck on the far side of the block, creating walking for folks who wanted to attend their meetings or christening or something that might be being held at the facility. So it wasn't a great marriage for the coexistence. So we immediately set out to sit down with the Legion and have conversations. And I have to be honest with you, as you probably would expect from a group like the American Legion, they were honorable gentlemen right through. They were demanding honorable gentlemen, but they were honorable gentlemen. And we had a lot of conversations, but first we needed to pick a location. And what we all decided was we wanted it to be a permitted use, and we're the zone. And we also wanted them to be adjacent to ample public parking so that they didn't have to have an enormous parking lot that they very rarely used, but there was parking that was available to them on the days of the year where they might need that parking. So the site that is in question was determined to be an excellent site for a host of reasons. Environmentally, it's already a parking lot. Won't involve a lot of trees and removal. It's permitted in the zone across the street from a public parking lot. And so we sat down with Walter and Bob Bennett, and we started to talk about what it is that the new facility should look like. We asked our architects to come to the meeting so we could help them program. What is it that you really need? What is it that you want? What programs are you running so we can help you and build the right building for you? So a few things came out of that. One was we love it to be on one floor, right? It's a lot easier when everything's on one floor. It's easier from a management point of view, when some of your members are seniors or might otherwise be disabled. So we wanted to get them on one floor. And while they didn't really have a large desire to have more space, they felt as though their space was pretty adequate, they didn't want to have less space. So we sort of took those two components. Obviously, they needed new bathrooms, which is a little ironic after the conversation we had at the end of our last meeting, handicap accessible bathrooms, and so on. And that was a big part of how we went about designing the building. And then we talked about, we didn't want to just build them a shell because frankly they have a lot more than a shell now. They have a great building with a lot of cool different things going on inside of it. So we talked, and included in our agreement with them are things like a new ice maker and a couple of televisions and a bar out in the meeting room. So when they do host an event, everything is much easier for them to operate. We went so far as even getting some emails of specs and model numbers for the ice makers. So some of that information is actually in our contract with the Legion. But to you guys that are here, I hope you appreciate Walter and what a real spirited leader he is. He had your programs and all of you in heart every minute of the way, but he also had the community at heart because he recognized this was something that the Legion didn't want to necessarily get in the way of or slow down. They just wanted to be treated fairly. And I think that with the mayor's guidance, because frankly the mayor had to come to a few meetings to make sure the ball kept rolling, the mayor was wonderful, and obviously Jim and Len and the parking authority folks were also there to facilitate pushing this through to an agreement. So we have just a few witnesses for you tonight, certainly nothing as large or grand as last week. Our engineer will talk you through the site and how it lays out, which was also an issue that we discussed with them, where their doors want to be and so on. And our architect will explain the inside and the outside of the building with a little bit of a focus on how it's programmed. Just quickly, because we thought it was important since we were relocating the use, I spoke to Walter a little bit about what their scheduling is. And they have a social room that he says over the last couple of years on Friday nights has been booked anywhere between 6 or 8 Friday nights of the year for things like an anniversary party or a Sweet 16. And on Saturday, a similar number. So this is not a facility that's running every Saturday night. It's 6 to 8 times a year on a Saturday. And then on Sunday seems to be a little bit more popular with christenings and those types of things. On Sunday, he said, I think they did 20 or 19 Sundays last year. The facility doesn't open until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so it dovetails perfectly with parking across the street. On Monday nights, so I think it's every Monday, the Boy Scouts meet there in the community. That's typically 12 to 15 folks that are coming, probably some of them not driving yet, so just a handful of cars. On Tuesdays, the American Legion meets from 7 to 9, and the Vietnam veterans meet the alternate Tuesday. So that's 2 Tuesday nights a month. On Wednesdays, once a month, the Sons of the American Legion meet, and on Thursdays, once a month, the auxiliary the Ladies Auxiliary of the Legion meets. And all of those organizations and meetings generally are anywhere from 10 to 20 people, depending on what attendance looks like that night and what else is going on. Also, some of the senior organizations, I understand, borrow. AARP may borrow the facility once or twice a year when they need a little bit of a larger space, and I think they meet Monday afternoons or Monday mornings, so obviously not an issue. So we think we've been able to design a building that we're excited to build for the Legion that will meet all of their needs, be an enormous improvement over the facility they have now, but not really be a dramatically different facility that would host bigger events or more events. It's sort of a nice, clean, new facility so they can carry out their objectives that they've been moving forward with since 1919. So I'm done. I guess we're going to call the engineer first, Jem?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions?
They're going to wait till the
Members,
end.
any questions for Mr. Santella?
Great.
Proceed.
Thanks.
Okay, we'd like to call Richard Jarmel, please.
You swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I'm Richard Jarmel. I'm a principal at Jarmel Kaizel Architects and Engineers in Livingston. I'm a licensed engineer in New Jersey since 1992. I'm also licensed in Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, Delaware, Minnesota, Florida, Vermont, and Massachusetts. I have not appeared before this board before, but I have appeared before other boards throughout the state.
Thank you, Mr. Jarmel, for giving us your professional accreditations, and we will consider you an expert witness.
The site, we have this site plan here. The site is right here at the corner of Winnick and Calvin Places.
And so should we mark the aerial photo as A1?
Yes, please, let's mark that A1.
And Today is 7/24.
And what this aerial photo shows you is...
Jarmel, you can hold
Grab
that,
that?
right? You can, yeah, take that out and hold it if you would.
What the aerial photo shows you is that it's currently a parking lot for 27 cars owned by the parking authority. It's 100% impervious. It's completely paved. The lot is 13.03 of Block 145. Calvin and Wernick Place both allow for two-way traffic. Calvin has a travelway of 24 feet, and Wernick has a travelway of approximately 32 feet. There is metered parking along Wernick Place in this area. The adjacent uses are all business uses around the area from what I was able to ascertain. There are lawyers, there's doctors. I believe these are counseling centers, these three buildings. The current slope, or current property slopes from east to west. It's relatively flat. There's about a 5-foot grade elevation across the property. And there are storm drains and inlets on Calvin Place that we will be tying into. A2?
Yes, please.
What this drawing shows is the proposed site conditions. It's a little hard to see. We were hoping we'd have the screen and projector again tonight. But what we're doing is the pink is the building, the green is landscaped areas, the gray is proposed parking on the two side streets. And currently the property is zoned in the B3 zone. We're allowable use in that zone for a social hall. And get out all the zoning data. The maximum building height allowable in the zone is 35 feet. We're proposing 23.1 feet. The minimum front yard setback is 35 feet. Is allowable 35 feet. We have 12 feet to the building, 10 feet to the building's overhang. The minimum side yard setback is 10 feet. We have 8 feet to the building and 5.9 feet to the overhang.
Mr. Jarmel, could you direct us to what sheet number that is in our set of plans?
That is sheet 301. I don't know if that's in the site plan documents we submitted. No, it's not.
But is it true that this is just a rendered
This
site
is
plan?
just a rendered site
can you
plan,
sh-
so that would
Can you share with the
be...
board what sheet the site plan would be on?
Yes, it is.
So we don't have a drawing that just outlines the building on the plan?
Probably the best drawing to go to is C301.
C301?
Yes. And there is, you can see there's a box in the middle of the property. That's the allowable building area. Rear yard setback, the requirement is 25 feet. We have 8 feet to the building, 5.9 feet to the overhang. The minimum lot depth is 100 feet. Its existing is 79 feet and proposed is 75 feet. That's an existing nonconformity. The lot size requirement is 10,000 feet. We have 7,900, again, an existing nonconformity. Maximum building coverage is 40%. Currently, it's 100%, or impervious coverage is 100%, and we're proposing 54%, so we're looking for a variance for that. And impervious lot coverage is the requirement is allowing 70%. Currently, it's 100%, and proposed it will be 80%. So we are looking for variances for the front yard setback, side yard setback, rear yard setback, and building coverage.
And impervious, even though you're reducing the impervious, correct?
We are reducing the impervious from the current condition.
But yes, Mr. Renaud, it
Yes.
is a variant situation.
Right.
This drawing is a color version of 302, I believe it is.
And we'll mark this A3.
Three, yes.
302.
Is that
I'm sorry, 301.
real?
301, which this yellow area here shows us the allowable building area.
And the diagonal lines around the perimeter, what does that represent?
These lines? Or these?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're just
inside.
showing the building, edge of the building.
Oh. And, okay.
Continue, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. The site, or the access to the building will be off of Calvin Place, pretty much in the center of the building here. We are providing ADA accessible routes into the building. There will be parking along Calvin Place, 5 spots, and along Warnick Place, 9 spots, replacing the parallel parking on Warnick with head-in parking. So it gives us a total of 14 spaces for the building.
Which street are the 9 on and which the 5?
9 are on Warnick, the 5 are on Calvin.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Jarmel,
Yes.
on the plan that you have up there and that we have in front of us, the outer lines of the lot are not drawn in, is that correct? I just want to make sure
The
I
outer
understand.
lines of the lot are the heavy dark line with 2 dashes, heavy dark line, and then 2 dashes again, this line.
No, that's the building.
No, I think you're...
Okay,
The dashed line? No.
No, they're my drawing, that's why.
so they may not be on our drawings.
No, it
That's-
is not on
That's
your
my
drawing.
question, okay.
Yes, I apologize. It is on C-101, the existing condition drawing. Shows you the lot line.
Here. 101, you said 101.
We are providing new curbs, new storm drainage that will connect up to the system in Calvin Place. And I think the largest site feature we have is a retaining wall along Warnick Place. Due to the grade change there.
How many entrances are proposed for the building?
Well, 1 main entrance, but there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total exits and entrances into the building.
Great, thank you.
There's also the off-site parking across the street that can be utilized by the American Legion. With respect to the drainage, we're reducing the overall impervious on the site, so reducing the flow off the site. We're connecting to the existing system, and we're also, by reducing the amount of impervious, improving the water quality.
Jarmel, are the 3 concrete pads for 3 sheds, are they part of this development?
Yes.
And those are sheds that are part of the veteran hall use?
Yes, they use those sheds, I believe, for storage of,
Yes, they currently store some of the Boy Scout materials and the auxiliary. I think there's some parades materials in there as well. So they were concerned that they would be able to move that storage with them. And since there's no basement, this was the solution.
I see. So those sheds are existing and they're just going to be moved?
Correct. Well, no, we're going to build nice new sheds, but everything that's in them is already there, some in sheds outside, and I think maybe some in the basement.
Okay, so on this lot, besides the actual building, there are going to be these 3 sheds where they're shown on this
Correct.
site plan?
Correct. Designed to match the building. I think there'd be a little architectural testimony on that.
Okay, oh, okay, thank you.
all the utilities we need, the sanitary sewer, gas, water, phone and electric all exist, and actually cable TV exists at the property in the street. So there's very little work they need to do to tie everything into the new building.
Are we proposing a sidewalk on the site, Mr. Drummond?
We are not proposing a sidewalk.
And is that consistent with the condition as exists currently?
Yes. Yeah, there's no sidewalks there now. If we added a sidewalk, it would go nowhere because none of the adjoining properties have sidewalk.
Thank you.
Is that a waiver?
That would be a
Yes,
waiver.
that's a waiver request.
Can I ask you a question while you're there?
Sure.
We're looking at C 301. So how much of what's shown on there is within the lot lines? In other words, are the parking spaces completely or partly within the lot lines?
They are partly within the lot lines.
Okay. And where are they with respect to the existing right-of-way?
They impede onto the existing right-of-way. Along Calvin Place, it's about 6 feet they'll protrude into the existing right-of-way. And on Warnick, probably about 6 feet again.
Is that a waiver, or?
Well, that leads to my question, which is, how about with respect to the paved portion of the right-of-way?
Currently, well, it's currently paved, and we're reusing that pavement area. So here's the property line now. So we're just extending the striping out.
Okay.
And here, the cars are parked this way, parallel to the curb line, and we're just extending them out again.
Okay.
Is that clear?
So,
I guess the question is exactly from the horizontal parking arrangement that we have now to the new arrangement, how far beyond that will it protrude? Is it 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet? Do we know?
It should be exactly where it is now.
There you go.
Yeah. Because the cars are 8 feet wide.
Well, again, that's good to just have that clarity.
This drawing, which I just marked A4, shows the areas we're proposing landscape in. It's all the green areas, bushes, foundation plantings along the building, one big tree here, and the rest grass. A couple of trees here.
so, Mr. Jarmel, is this parking really for the VFW, or is it,
It can be used for
there's
anyone. You know,
parking.
as Mr. Santola testified, they're not there, during the day. So it's only when they're there that they'll use that parking, and they'll also use the parking across the street. So
So-
during day, when they're not there, it's for everyone. It's public parking.
So, right now, I mean, the public can park on Warnick Place and on Calvin Place, but that
On
parking
Warnick,
is
they can
parallel
park at
parking?
meters, parallel parking. On
Okay.
Calvin, I do not believe there's a no parking sign there, but nobody parks there. There's not enough room, the current driveways and the neighboring driveways.
Just to clarify, currently there's an arrangement between the Parking Authority and the Legion where some of the cars that are parked are actually on Legion property, and the Parking Authority pays over some money to the Legion on an annual basis, and these spaces will technically be their spaces, and they'll be talking to the Parking Authority about making some of those available for certain periods of time and so on. So it'll be a very similar arrangement, but the goal was to make sure there was some dedicated parking for the Legion members, so that when they went there would be a space.
Right, I asked the question because that's what you're showing on the site plan, so I just want to make that clear.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So I guess I need to make it clear then. So are these dedicated spaces, or are they just going to be open spaces?
They are open spaces.
Well, they're
No?
the Legion spaces.
Okay. Going to
Some,
be designated in some way as Legion spaces, I guess. How would I know, if I were going to park, how would I know that?
we would wait and we would ticket you. Jim, just remind me what, I'm just trying to recall.
Right now, the parking authority leases, I believe it's most of the parking spaces that are on the Legion property from the Legion, because the Legion does not use those during the day. So we pay them rent for those spaces, and we would hope to be able to enter a similar agreement where we could continue to pay them rent. The spaces would be publicly available during the day, just as the ones are on the current site. They would be publicly available for commuters or shoppers during the day, and then revert to the use of the Legion at night when there are no shoppers or commuters.
So there'd actually be more available parking for the surrounding uses that are open during the day.
Answered that sufficiently for you, counsel?
Yeah, it's not so much that I
No.
need, that I'm trying to get to an answer. I just want to find out what the answer is so that I can memorialize whatever happens here in some way.
Very good.
And then we received two review letters, one from the town's engineer and one from the town's planner. With respect to the engineering letter, which is prepared by Mazer, we are fine agreeing to everything except for item number 12, which is the safety fence. There are a couple
Which
of-
letter are we on?
The Mazer letter dated July 8th.
Page 3.
And it's page 3 of 5, item number 12.
Yes. Where they're suggesting a fence at this retaining wall here. And we don't think it's necessary. The walkway is on the low side of the retaining wall. To get to behind the guide rail that we're installing here, you have to walk to either end of the property where there's not a large grade change. And to actually get up high, you'd have to then walk on top of the wall and then fall off of it to get injured. So we don't think it's necessary there. We'd like not to install that.
Okay, well, we know that you're requesting it. We'll let our professional talk about it afterwards, I guess, but please proceed.
Everything else in the letter we were okay with. Some of the items need to be worked out between our office and the Mazer's office. They're asking for site triangle, which we'll look into. We believe if it's really the last parking spot here that would affect it. We believe if we make that a compact parking stall, it will work and provide the site triangle you need, or requesting. And with respect to the planner's letter, most of the items on here are waivers we're going to be asking for. First one is from section 110-154B for the required number of parking spaces on the site.
Can, Mr. Jarmel, can you refer to Mr. Constantine's letter?
Yes.
Which paragraph you're referring to?
That is item number 4.
Could we skip back to 2 before you get to 4?
Sure.
And I don't know if I need to clarify this with you or with Mr. Constantine, but I know you mentioned the setback from the overhangs, the variance is not from the overhangs, is that right? In other words, where the variance is from the building, the overhang is informational?
No, it's from the overhang, because the overhang is a deficient condition. If they were at the required setback, they're permitted the overhang, but they're not. They're already into that setback, so.
All right,
from
so
the
they need,
furthest-
so the
furthest
variances
protected
then, just to clarify, then the variances, the front yard setback, I think he mentioned this, is not 12 feet, but it's actually 10 feet.
10
And
feet,
then the rear
correct.
is not 8 feet, but 6 feet,
5.9 feet.
5.9? Okay.
And the side yard is also 5.9 from the overhang.
Side yard is 5.9. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
There may be one other variance that I think we just heard about in testimony, maybe more information, because there wasn't in the plans, it's for the sheds. Right now, what's shown on the plans were concrete pads in the back of the building, but the sheds themselves may require a accessory structure variance, the rear yard as well. We should just clarify that, clean that up as we move on through the application.
Good point.
And in our notice, we did note, well, we did provide that any additional variances or waivers the board deemed necessary during the hearing, so that we believe that although it was not included as part of our 200-foot property owner's notice, specifically for the accessory structures, we should still be able to have the board hear that variance this evening, and we can provide whatever justification for that variance as the board sees fit.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. So the rear yard setback then is, if we started with 8 feet, then we're 5 feet 9 with the overhang, and can you at least scale out or give me an estimate of how much further those sheds are going to encroach so we can cover them?
Yes.
We'll need to know whether the sheds go to the edge of the concrete pads or not. Determine that.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we just assume that they do?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that would be another 6 feet.
All right, so that's actually going to...
Make us 2.9 feet.
Well, no, we're only...
I'm sorry,
Is the 6 feet from the building or from the overhang?
6 feet is from the overhang, or from the building, so it's 4 feet from the
All
overhang.
right, so it's 1.9.
1.9 to the
what's
property
left.
line. Thank you. As I was
Bob?
saying that, I'm saying that doesn't
We
make
were in the
sense.
wrong-
I
right, we'd
believe
be
the
on wrong
accessory,
part.
the shed setback is from section 110, 112.6 for accessory structures.
Jim, is the setback, though, from the rear yard line? Is there any setback from the building itself? Because looking at this plan, it looks like the shed there's no separation between the shed and the building.
I think that's right. Well, we left an option to either have further conversations with the Legion to either purchase prefab sheds that would fit nicely on there, or more likely, we'll probably just build them in the field, and they'll butt up against the wall. So there'll be accessory structures, because they'll be their own structures, and I think they'll have they should probably be considered like if you were to put a shed up at your house, it doesn't have the same rear yard setback as your house does.
We could ask the zoning officer what the consistency is of
Okay.
interpretation, maybe just to,
Because I think what you're saying is not for the property line for the building, right?
Right. Is there any requirement that...
Chris, you're out there in the
Let's-
audience. What's the setback distance for accessory structure from the main house?
If the structure is 100 square feet or less, the requirement is 5 feet side and rear. If it's less than 100 square feet, sorry, if it's 101 square feet or more, it's 5 feet. If it's less than 100 square feet, it's 3 feet.
Okay,
If
so,
it's attached to the structure, it's not an accessory structure, it's considered part of the primary structure. So I recommend it be a 1-inch gap.
okay. So, based on the square footage, 5 or 3 feet, and so we're gonna say, 1 inch separation.
Okay. So the pads are 6 feet by 10 feet, which is 60 square feet each.
Correct.
So is that a 3-foot setback? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 feet is required. Okay.
And we're providing 1.9.
Right.
Okay, the next waiver we're looking for is section 110-130C, which requires parking to be in the rear of the building or interior to the site. Obviously, based on the size of the site and the conditions at the site, we can't comply with that.
And is there a reference to Mr. Constantine's
That is number 5 on Mr. Constantine's
number
letter
5?
or memo.
Are you going to be addressing everything in Mr. Constantine memo, or only the things that?
Only the things that we're asking for waivers for are, which is, the next one is number 6.
We skipped 3. Why don't we do 3?
Oh, because I believe the answer to that is because we will comply with Mr. Constantine's comment. We are going to be moving the location of the solid waste and recycling facility.
Okay, so
we're
3 will comply.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to push it back so it aligns with the face of the building
You
here.
know, I just assume if the chairperson doesn't mind, there aren't that many items.
Want to go through them
Wanna
sequentially?
go
Because
one
I
by
want to
one?
make sure that we don't, miss one.
Sure.
So
Back
So-
to page 1.
Starting back on page 1, number 1,
I was okay up to where we were.
Oh, okay.
One I can live with. One, you've covered one.
Okay.
2, we talked about the setbacks.
yes.
3,
We just
you've
talked about
agreed you'll comply.
relocating the dumpster.
4
4 is the
is the waiver
waiver.
for parking spaces, which you mentioned,
5 is a waiver for the location of the parking spaces.
which you mentioned.
Chin. 6 is the same comment again about the site triangle.
Right.
And we'll work to
Comply,
provide a
okay.
site triangle there. 7 is
Sidewalks.
sidewalks.
You covered
We
some.
covered sidewalks previously. 8 is the proposal for head-in parking within the public right-of-way along both Warnick and Calvin, which I spoke about earlier.
Right, so there'll have to be a condition that this parking will be approved of by the mayor and council.
We agree.
Okay. Yep.
9 is, we are asking for a waiver from section 110-180. That's for the shade trees. Based on the planner's calculation, we need 9 new trees on the site, and there's just nowhere to put 9 trees that, once they mature, they won't interfere with the building.
Jim, don't you normally land bank trees, or do we not do that anymore?
We do. It's also possible that when the final plans are resolved for the Pearl Street project that we approved last week, that they may have excess trees there. So I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to actually meet that
Okay.
at Pearl Street, and I think that might be a way of rectifying that.
Great.
Okay.
So there
So
will...
what you're saying is we're not going to grant them, they don't have to plant them on site, but we're,
I think when the
Not gonna
landscaping
grant-
comes up to speed on Pearl Street, because we do allow for trees to be placed in another location, so I think we'll meet it, I think the applicant will meet it there.
okay.
So, Jim, but you say 13, and I believe the testimony has been for 9. Is there agreement on the number?
What I'm suggesting, Ellen, is I believe that they will have enough additional trees that they're going to put in the Pearl Street project that would meet
Their obligation.
the
Okay.
obligation here,
Right, I understand.
since they agreed to all of that last week, so
Okay.
we're fine.
Item 10 is to revise the landscaping plans. That's fine, we will change and comply with what the planner would like us to plant there instead of what we picked. 11 is the American Legion going to display a cannon or any other military equipment outside? I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe so.
The answer to that question is yes. They have 2, I think, on site now that they would like to move exactly where they go, I think has sort of been the subject with the town. Maybe that's a developer's agreement item, Mr. Renaud. We're not 100% sure of how that plays out, but they would, in fact, I think every Legion Hall would, in fact, like to have, be able to bring that cannon along with them.
So we have 2 cannons now?
Correct.
Okay.
Can we refer to them loosely as the cannon?
Okay.
And then number 12, the last item is an architectural comment, and we'll let the architect tell you about that.
Okay, so did you say you agree with those?
On the architectural
Yes.
comment, our architect can speak to that, but believe that proposed
Okay.
changes set forth by Mr. Constantine have been taken under advisement and are going to be agreed to.
Okay.
And that completes my testimony.
Okay. Board members, questions for this witness? Doesn't look like we have any. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Back to you, Ms. Maswing.
Thank you. We would like to call Matthew Jarmel.
Let's just need to get you sworn in, Mr. Jarmel, so you can put that right up there.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give, anything shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
First name is Matthew?
First name is Matthew, last name is Jarmel, J-A-R-M-E-L. Yes, he's my brother.
Can you briefly give the board your qualifications?
I'd be pleased to. I hold a Bachelor's of Architectural degree from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, an MBA in Real Estate Development and Urban Land Use from Rutgers University. I'm a registered architect in the state of New Jersey since 1994. I'm board certified by the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. I actually hold over 20 licenses throughout the state. I've testified before well over 100 municipal planning and zoning boards in New Jersey.
Board will accept you as an expert witness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The drawing I have up now,
And we'll mark that A5, Matthew.
we're marking A5, is actually a colored rendering of the drawing that was part of the site plan submission. It depicts a floor plan of the building and the 4 elevations of the building can be seen. The building proposed is 4,205 square feet. I think the attorney said 2,004. It's essentially the same size as the current American Legion Hall, but it actually is a much better facility for them. I don't know if you're familiar with their existing building, but it's a very old building. I'm actually told it was an old school that was relocated to the site, and their program is on 2 floors, a basement and a first floor. The building doesn't have an elevator, and it's basically not handicapped accessible in any way, either from an entry standpoint or within it or the toilet rooms. By putting the building completely on one level and adjusting the grades of the site, the building is fully handicapped accessible, both from an entry standpoint, egress standpoint, toilet facilities, and so on. I believe you're all familiar with the functions. It basically acts as a community center and a social hall for the American Legion and veterans. They also provide other community services. There was some testimony by my brother, Richard Jarmel, and Mr. Santola about the sheds. The sheds are for storage of materials from the Boy Scouts, and they're actually stored outside the building because sometimes access is needed to them directly without coming through the building during programs. The building that we designed, being single-story, we designed it with a sloping roof so it fits in with the character of the neighborhood, but it's sort of a false sloping roof in that it's really, unlike your home where you have a full gable to a ridge, we're creating a mansard that appears to look like a sloping roof, and it is sloping, but in the middle we'll have a well, and that well will be used to screen all mechanical equipment. So we'll have rooftop package air conditioning heating units that provide HVAC to the building, but are basically screened around the roof itself. We proposed using a base around the building of cultured stone, and then more of a residential type of vinyl siding on top of that. Your planner provided us with a sketch, and I believe it's number 12 in the planner's letter, talks about making suggestions for, we'll say, enhancing or changing the facade material a little bit. In speaking with my client, we would very much like to comply with some of the planner's suggestions, and we would be willing to work with them, assuming granted approval this evening, to make some adjustments to it. The planner suggested along the Wernick side elevation, changing the windows slightly, and on the main elevation along Calvin, we have double windows. They suggested putting in single windows and eliminating shutters along Wernick Street. There was a suggestion to change the cultured stone base, which we currently show, to a material called Stowe, which is it's actually a synthetic stucco or an EIFS material. We would work with them to get that look, but we don't recommend that material low to the ground because it's actually foam with a synthetic stucco on it. So if someone kicked it or a landscaper knocked a rock or a snowplow pushed snow up against it, it would damage it. So we wouldn't want to do that. But other than that, there were suggestions about softening the dormers, which we're open to, and adding signage for the American Legion, which we're of course open to in that regard. So we'll work with your planning department to soften the elevation as they state, use more traditional elements at the entryway and columns, and make the building look more in keeping with their sketch. I wish I had more to say to you tonight because I like to talk, but my portion of the application is relatively simple, and I'd be very pleased to address any questions or comments you have about the architecture of the building.
Very good. Thank you for your candor. Board members, any questions for this witness? Or professionals?
Just one clarification, you may have misread, it did say stone on the bottom, so we weren't recommending changing it. So
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay, we're
yeah.
consistent, so we're in agreement with.
Good to know. So
Okay,
that really
it's my
does not
middle-aged
require-
eyes, I'm sorry.
Very good.
Sir, so the applicant is agreeing to number 12 in the planner's
Yes,
recommendations?
we're agreeing to work with the planner and adjust our elevations to be more in compliant with the sketch that was provided to us with the planning report.
Okay, thank you.
And you're indicating the building area is what's shown on your plan, which is 4205, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Ellen?
And, yeah, is there just, how many entrances to the building are there? Is
Okay,
there-
so there's a main entrance off of Calvin Place, which
On
is
Calvin.
intended to be the primary means of egress both in and out of the building. There are two exit doors along Wernick Space, which are basically emergency egress doors, and as well as one that would face to the north and one to the rear of the building, rear elevation, what we call side elevation. And again, those are secondary doors that are there primarily for fire emergency. This room has secondary exits. This being a social hall is an assembly use, so it's anticipated, actually, we've got an occupancy on the plan of a maximum occupancy of 173 people, which is unlikely, but that, based on the building code, is what the building could hold, and we have to provide doors for that many people.
Just on the, Mr. Renaud, with regard to the elevation of the building, obviously, it's going to be the American Legion's building, so we had all agreed on this facade. I think the proposed changes are excellent. I don't suspect the Legion will have any concerns, but that really needs to be a three-way conversation to make sure they're ultimately happy with the building.
Understood. Ellen, you had another question?
No, I'm looking at the plans and it's answered on the plan.
Okay. Other board members, questions for this witness? Thank you for your testimony, Mr.
Thank you for your
Jarmel.
time this evening.
Again, Mrs. Massaway, back to you.
Back to our regularly scheduled program.
Yes, indeed.
I'd like to call Cray Rainkamp, please.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
And the board remembers Mr. Rankin from last week, and we can just say that we'll continue to accept him as an expert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
They accepted your qualifications.
No, I
Craig.
just,
Have you had an opportunity to review the plans for, that we have provided the board for our application this evening?
I have.
Have you also had the opportunity to review the surrounding uses and the surrounding properties? in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Are you able to make any planning opinions based on that?
Yes.
Can you share those with the board,
And I
please?
will. Thank you. Good evening. It's nice to be before you again, and I promise this one will be a lot shorter than the last one was. The planning on this is quite straightforward. And you've already heard from Mr. Jarmel, the senior, about specifically the variances and quantifying them and telling you where they were, so I won't go back through that again. But let me just, in plain English, talk about the context of the variances in this particular neighborhood and then deal very quickly with the planning findings. Under Poland, as this board is aware, we're to look at the totality of circumstances on a particular application and deciding whether the variances are necessary, not particularly go through one variance at a time and decide how that impacts the application in and of itself. And the totality here, as you heard from Mr. Santola, is this is part and parcel of a larger effort by this community to achieve revitalization on a very important parcel on the other side of the tracks, and at the same time bring a new use on this side of the tracks. So it's a two-part revitalization that's working on both sides of the track, impacting two neighborhoods, and all of that is part of this application. It's an upgraded facility, as you've heard, for this very important civic use, giving them the opportunity to have the use on a single floor rather than dealing with having it upstairs in their existing facility, handicap bathrooms, modern kitchen facilities, bringing the building up to modern usage and better able to serve the functions for the organization. So it's not just that they're being moved, it's that they're being moved and improved in important ways for their own missions. The building itself is a minimum size to meet the needs, as you heard from Mr. Jarmel, the architect. It was a very cooperative and integrative process in coming up with the size of the building and relating it to their functions. This is not a situation in which the variances could be improved by simply shrinking the building. It's not a generic retail building that could be whatever size fits. You also saw on one of the engineers' exhibit that the actual building that could fit on this undersized lot would actually be dysfunctional pretty much for any use, but certainly could not fulfill the needs of this particular organization. So this is not a building that has been grossly oversized, taking advantage of your zoning waivers that are being requested, but that the waivers are variances and waivers are necessary for the building that has been very carefully designed for the size, for the site, and for the mission that it's meant to fulfill. As was described to you, for this particular use and mission, it was critical for it to be located in your community, co-located with a major parking facility. It was not that they needed parking on a daily basis. They don't want the maintenance headache of having that on their lot. And that limits areas in your community that this use would be suitable for. This is one of those very special and rare locations that can actually fulfill that mission. And to the extent that some C2 relief is necessary, I think that goes part and parcel with being one of the few sites in your community that can actually effectively host it. With regard to zoning, this is clearly a permitted use in the district, but as you can imagine, the governing body could not possibly have had in mind in talking about standards for this fairly conventional business district what a social hall would need or what it would look like on a site. It's not odd for a slightly different kind of use than you would see in a district to need some sort of bulk relief. It's a different use, it functions differently than the things that might have been on the mind of this board or the governing body in thinking about zoning. And I dare say when we get to setbacks, if this board looks at this with Mr. Constantine, you'll have build two lines rather than setback lines, consistent with the pattern in the neighborhood that's there. As you're all aware, I'm sure, and as you saw on the aerial, I won't put it back up given its scale, but basically all of the uses on Wernick are up to just a few feet back from the sidewalk. That's only on the Wernick side. I keep wanting to say Vernick, sorry. On the Wernick side of the street. And also on Calvin, all of the uses are relatively close to the street. I don't think there's a conforming front yard on either of those two streets, with the possible exception of the school, which is the second use in on Calvin and is set back much further than everything else in the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood where everything has been built historically closer to the street. With regard to sidewalks, I did say that there is one on the other side. Let me do that with the aerial. And the aerial has been marked A2. There is a sidewalk that comes from Main down Wernick to the end and terminates in this location where the parking lot is. There is no sidewalk on Calvin. There is no sidewalk on this side of Wernick. So if a sidewalk were going to be required on this lot, it wouldn't connect to anything. I've now been out on the site 6 or 7 times since I became aware of my involvement in the project, and watching people in the afternoon, if they're coming to the parking lot or coming to Calvin from Main Street, they basically get to the midpoint on the block of the sidewalk and cut across the parking lot, make their way between cars. And I think what's important about the site plan itself, while it's not a sidewalk in the traditional sense that you're talking about a public improvement out in the right-of-way, there is a concrete sidewalk that's part of the design that goes along the frontage of the building. So as a practical matter, what people are going to do in a safe way, rather than come all the way down the sidewalk to the end, they're likely still going to try and cut the corner, but here they'll be cutting the corner and have a concrete walkway that they can walk on. So the pedestrian functioning is there, even if it's not a formal sidewalk in the parking in the right-of-way. So while a sidewalk waiver is requested, we've not been unmindful of the way pedestrians are currently circulating or providing a rational way for them to move without actually walking through the parking spaces. It's there, and will continue to function largely as it does today. In terms of the overall design, clearly you see green on that plan, and there isn't today with the parking lot. And where the setbacks are actually diminished relative to what's required, in the direction coming towards Main Street along Wernick Place, we're adjacent to a parking lot for the building that's on the corner. There's a long driveway that comes down in the gravel parking lot. So the diminution of setback in that area is not bringing our building too close to a building or something that would be untoward. It's actually just coming closer to an existing parking area. And going the other way on Calvin, there's actually a driveway that comes in between this property and a what I would guess just from its architecture, a former single-strand family structure that's part of the counseling complex. So in that area, it's not that the setback reduction is going to cause any detriment in that direction either. So with that as the overall context, I would just briefly say in terms of planning findings, we're advancing 3 purposes of the Act. The general welfare for all of the reasons that I just outlined. Purpose I, which goes to proper civic design. We're adding a very attractive building on what is currently a parking lot, and additional landscaping that will be improved with your planner's able assistance. And Purpose M, which speaks to the efficiency of the use of land. Here we're able to take an existing parking lot, put a civic function on it, something that I think will bring more energy to your downtown than additional parking in this particular corner. So I think for those 3 reasons, the purposes of the Act are being advanced, and the community is getting benefits from this application. In terms of detriments, as I outlined, I don't see any that are arising from the setbacks being reduced on the 2 sides. Parking has been thought through, as you heard from Mr. Santillo earlier, so I don't believe that there are any substantial detriments that are arising as a result of this application. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, questions? Professionals? Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rankin.
That concludes my presentation.
It does, okay. All right, board members, before we move along, I'm just going to ask, is there any additional questions for any of the witnesses we've heard so far? Okay. Bob, do you want to do a separate session with questions and comments?
Yes, why don't we just open it to the public and let them make comments or ask questions? Does that make sense?
We can combine, that's what I'm asking. Do you want to combine the 2?
That's fine.
Okay. So now I'm going to open the public portion. If you have questions or comments, please rise, come up to the microphone, give us your name and your address, and let us know what they are.
My name is Chris Velasmore, south side of the tracks over there. I was here, I'm sorry, I apologize, Mr. Mayor, for being late to the meeting, but I did have it on TV. That was a compelling last testimony, sir, and I thank you.
Can I ask you to hold on a second? Because I'd just like to swear you in, if you wouldn't mind. Would you raise your right hand? You're busy right now. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
It is the truth, in conjunction from what I've heard.
Can we get a yes?
Yes, sir. It was very compelling testimony. I don't have my glasses. What I heard from that is taking advantage of the people from the wrong side of the tracks. Whoever it was, you spoke of 2 sides of the tracks and how you're going to help us out on the wrong side of the tracks. Now my question would be, why does it have to be on Welty Street? My question is still the water table. You're not going to have a basement in this place because they're going to be bailing it out. There's empty lots, Mr. Mayor. There are empty lots over on Main Street, right by where the sub shop and stuff used to be. What's going on by where the Chase Bank is? I don't see, Halsey Street was a beautiful place. Mr. Jessup made a whole park there. There's ducks and everything. There's children. There's a darn rehab there. This is like, could be a trigger for people that are trying to help their life. They're gonna come out of a rehab and see a darn bar, and there are people here that did not bargain for that. And Mr. Mayor, a couple years ago, we did indeed talk about building the parking deck in Halsey Street. I asked you then, what will it do to our property values? And if indeed it does turn it down, are you gonna lower our taxes? Can you answer that, Mr. Mayor?
Answer what?
If our property value goes down due to being within 200 feet of a bar, are you gonna lower our taxes? I know that's not up to you. Is anybody gonna do it?
I think you answered the
No, our
question.
taxes rise. The letter you have been reading from doesn't appear to be the same letter. And I have particular questions in the letter that you sent us that was dated for the meeting that was supposed to be held July 17th. Page 2, paragraph 2. In addition, the applicant requested the board grant any additional approval of permits, variances, interpretations, waivers, or exceptions. What the heck? Without asking anybody of that, without reviewing processing. That means you get this application through, you can do whatever you want. Can you answer any of these questions? Will our property value go down or not?
I don't believe your property value is going to go down. I think you're going to have an access,
To
a
a
building,
bar.
you're going to, ma'am, you want me to finish or
I'm
not?
sorry, I stand corrected, I should not have interrupted you.
I think you're misinterpreting it and the terminology and quoting this as a bar. This is a social hall. The American Legion does a number of things. Yes, they do have a bar in their place, just like the Firehouse has one, just like the Elks has one, just like some of our churches, including the Temple, has a bar in it. I think what you have to look at is what the activities that group has provided. I don't think people know all of the activities that the American Legion is involved in, not only with veterans, but with young people today, providing access and scholarships to the governor's school. In fact, talking to their commander, they were the ones that built the Campbell baseball field. I think they've been involved in the community. I actually had our police department look back for the last 7 years the number of incidents at the American Legion. Guess what? You know what the incidents were at the American Legion? 2 or 3 times the alarm went off, either through lightning, all right, or somebody not hitting the proper button, and we sent the police officer out. There's not been any drunken disorderlies. There's not been any incidents of fights. I think you're miscategorizing and the folks here from the American Legion.
I think I've been walking past there and I smelled their recycling, and I think that there is a veteran that has property down there, and he's not totally in favor of it. He's in our parade every year. I cannot speak for him, but I know I've smelled their recycling trash. And I know it's there, and I know there's little, this shirt does contain one proud American, but I really am speaking for them when I'm asking you, why do you want to, they have weddings and stuff there. My sister got married in a veteran, and the VFW. Like, they need to advertise also.
And
Who's gonna
now,
see their
now they will
advertising?
have an upgraded facility, brand
Because
new
I have Mr.
amenities, which will help them in providing some of the activities, not only for the veterans, but also for the community.
I don't see they're gonna do anything for me, except I'm sorry, and I think the veterans should be on Main Street. I think you should proudly display them. I think we've had problems putting them on waiting lists. I know the parking lot on Halsey Street,
Okay.
and I'm not saying anything bad about the veterans, no way whatsoever. I'm just saying, I think they could be placed in a more prominent place. I really do. I can see before anybody else that may have anything to say.
Thank you for your comments. Other members of the public who would like to share their thoughts or comments with the board, again, please rise, come on up to the microphone, give us your name and your address, and give us your question or comment, please.
We're going to ask you to sign in, too, if you would.
Yes, please sign the piece of paper.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just while the gentleman's signing in, just to understand, the American Legion doesn't have a liquor license in Metuchen as you would think of one of the other restaurant establishments. They, like the Elks or the Temple, have a special social hall license that's not transferable to someone else. It doesn't act as a liquor license. So if we all got together and decided we wanted to open up a bar, restaurant, location, that liquor license does not go to anyone in a private facility, and it can't be used as a restaurant, bar scenario. It is only for a public use like the Legion.
Only for members.
Correct, and it's
I
for members.
appreciate your additional elaboration, and
I just want to assure everybody
proceed
that
at
this
your own peril.
is not going to get changed.
You swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state your full name and address for us, please?
Martin Jessen, 98 Union Avenue, but I represent Arnold Contracting, who's the neighbor directly to the east, and I represent Victorian Office Rentals, who is a neighbor directly to the north, abutting this property. I have a few questions, but my questions are for the engineer.
That's fine. You can ask the engineer your questions.
Right.
My first question is, when you look at the plan, does the catch basin on the runoff from the east side capture all the water from our property on the east side?
On this basin?
East side.
East side. So there's currently a basin here.
You're on the west side.
That's the west side.
I'll have to show you.
East.
East, this is north.
North, south?
East is over here. This is the east side.
Okay. The property is graded this way.
Yes.
So
It
there's-
flows from our property onto the American Legion property.
Right. So
My
there's,
question is, does the catch basin on the east side capture all our water?
I don't believe there is a basin back here that I know of.
I thought your plan was proposing one back there.
No, we're proposing here.
Okay. Well, then, my problem is, all of our water sheet flows off of our property onto the American Legion blacktop right now. Sheet flows across the parking lot and goes into the catch basin in Calvin Place. So therefore, all of our water will be flooding the American Legion.
That's the one I was looking at.
We do.
There's a swale back there, yes. And then there's an inlet by the stairs.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Can that inlet take the
Handle it.
water from our property?
I believe it can. The engineer asked us to submit calculations and pipe sizing, which we will do.
Because
So
my second question.
it will when it's all done.
Okay. Well, my second question is that a year ago, the planning board granted us permission to change the existing house from a two-family house into offices and put a 4,000 square foot addition on, and to put 25 parking places in the back. Will that catch basin take the additional runoff from our development?
No.
So does that mean your catch basin needs to be bigger? Or piping needs to be bigger?
That'll just go in my yard.
I don't, if they improve their property, do we need to
Well, I
capture?
think the question, Martin, is are you proposing any on-site drainage
No.
for your site?
No, our approval from the Metuchen Planning Board was actually before we knew about you,
Right.
except for the mayor, but we didn't know. But anyway, we were presently, today, we sheet flow off of our property onto the blacktop, streams across the blacktop to the catch basin on Calvin Place. When we proposed our addition and our expanded parking lot last year, it was the same drainage. I testified then they were gonna sheet flow across and go to the same catch basin. But if you put a building up that cuts it off,
Sure.
I just wanna make sure the American Legion doesn't get flooded.
I think there's two points to that. One is obviously we'll work with Mazer to make sure the pipe's the right size. The key is to get the water to the basin. Once it's in the basin, we can move it along safely. So we'll have to get in touch with you, Mr. Jessen. I guess the only question is, the drainage plan for your facility was to just sheet flow it across our property?
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
Exactly.
So we'll have,
That's a good approval you got.
That's what we're doing now, and that's what we're proposing to do in the future. We didn't change anything.
so we'll have
Except
to
the
deal with
impervious.
it, collect it, and transfer it to Calvin.
Right. Number
I'm
two,
good, thank you for bringing that up, though, because we will address that.
number two, site lighting.
Yes.
I didn't hear any testimony about site lighting, but site lighting.
Yes.
So site lighting, do you have enough lighting for the parking lot that you're proposing?
You're proposing, you're proposing will be 601. These are the drawings you already have. Do I need to mark them into these?
No. What drawing are we on? 601?
601. We're proposing lighting along Calvin.
Nothing along Warner?
Nothing along Warner.
Okay. So how do the people that park along Warner get to their car at night?
I believe there's an existing light on the pole out there, Cobra Head.
Okay, that's my question. On the east side again, on our property, is a parking authority street light that hangs over the parking lot. In my opinion, that street light will be hanging over the top of the roof of the building. Is that light in your calculations for site lighting?
No. We only provided new lighting here. The existing pole is, let me see, right there it's actually on the very corner of your property.
Now you did it.
Oh, no, it just...
You've just been taking the
Okay,
first.
so my question is, the Metuchen Parking Authority planted a street light on our property, okay? It's on the east side there. There's a concrete it shows on one of your plans. It's a concrete foundation with a big overhead light. If that light is not needed for site lighting, okay, I think it's shown on that plan right there.
Right there.
Yes, that street light, that's what I'm talking about. If that is not in your calculations, if that's not needed for lighting, I would request that this applicant remove that light and remove, sorry about the technical, remove that light and remove the concrete foundation with it, because if it serves no function, we don't really want it on our property anymore.
Let me go one better, because I think you're making a good point. Why don't the three of us, you, me, and the parking authority get together and make sure we're going to have adequate lighting for all three of us, and if that involves us taking down one of the poles, gladly. If somebody has to put up a new pole, we'll get that figured out, but that's important.
10 years.
My next question, I didn't hear any testimony about snow removal. Where do you put the snow?
We'll probably just push the snow up to the vacant, to the head of the parking spaces, unless it's too much. And then the parking authority is going to be involved with whether that gets pushed where their snow goes or whatever. I mean, I think it would only be a major snow event where pushing it forward into the space isn't going to be adequate.
Isn't pushing the snow forward on Calvin Place interfering within the walkway to get to the building?
But you're going to have to do both. You're going to have to push it up and make sure it's clear.
Well, I just want to make sure the American Legion knows that any decent snow, there's no place to put the snow, okay? Because when you try to plow your parking lot, there's no place to put it. And your main walkway coming into the building, okay, plus your emergency exits to get out on Warner Place side and stuff like that have to be open and have to be clear. But there's no place to put the snow because there's no land. You know, there's obviously not enough land for all the things we want to do here. But anyway, my next question is, if there's no place to put the snow, what happens when Metuchen plows Warner Place and plows Calvin Place if you're parked in one of those parking places?
I think the same thing that happens now.
Here, here.
No, but see, right now, they parallel park
Sure.
sideways to the curb, okay? And now when you park perpendicular to the curb, all the way in, okay? If an American Legionnaire is parked there and it snows, okay? When the snow dog comes in like that, he will have a windrow behind his car, okay? That is not there now, okay? Because when the cars are parked there, they go around the car, but they plow up to the curb. the town can't plow your lot. It can't plow into your parking. It's only gonna plow on the street.
Correct, so it'll leave a windrow here.
And there.
Currently, it's leaving it here alongside the cars that are parked there.
Yeah,
So it's the same condition, just they're backing out of it instead of driving
Yeah.
forward through it.
yeah. That's part of the problem. And, okay, so snow removal, just so American Legion knows, okay, it's really, be really difficult for your parking lot, and when the town plows you in, it's gonna be really difficult to get out. Okay, do you agree with that?
I do.
Okay. Next question, off-site parking. Okay, right now, there's 23 meter commuters that are parked in that lot, okay? Where do those 23 commuters go once you start construction?
I know, I'm not sure you were here last week, but the Nexus, who's in charge of the parking facility, is working on an interim parking plan that will include displacing everybody on Pearl Street. So these 23, frankly, are a drop in the bucket, but they will be put together with those that are being displaced. Some are gonna end up having to go to Metro Park. Some, the parking authority is gonna make facilities around town available. I think there was testimony that some of them will have valet parking, so you'll be able to get more folks into a parking lot that's holding fewer folks today. But I think one of the points, frankly, that shows the parking authority's commitment to the town and to this redevelopment is that this is a small lot that was generating revenue every year, and they've given that lot to the Legion in order to find what a lot of folks think is an appropriate home for them. So they're going to forego that, and those, obviously, once the deck is built, which will be shortly after our building, the Legion building that we're building is done, presumably those 23 folks will find a spot in the deck.
Okay. The ordinance requires 69 parking places, 14 are supplied. That's a deficit of 55 parking places. Are any of the parking places in Halsey Street, Calvin Place parking lot, are any of those parking places going to be reserved for the Legion?
No, none of those places will be reserved for the Legion, just so you're clear and we're clear on how this was set up. It's the exact same situation that currently happens on the Pearl Street lot. Anytime when the Legion has more folks in the facility than 14, let's say, is a time on a Sunday or Friday night when the parking lot at Halsey is, you tell me, 85% empty. So being adjacent to public parking was a key element for the Legion when the site selection process was done.
Right. I just want to make sure the American Legion knows that the parking lot that you just said to go park in, okay, is a 24-hour parking lot that has free parking on Sundays and holidays. So that every Saturday or Friday night or Monday through Friday, anytime, that you park out there without a monthly parking sticker. The parking authority gives out $44 illegal parking tickets for everybody that's out there. And all of those spaces out there, okay, are all monthly parking. You're eliminating 27 meter parking. That only leaves the meter parking along the perimeter and along Nordic Place and a little bit along Calvin Place. So there's going to be very few places that a Legionnaire can park on a Friday night or a Saturday without risking a $44 parking ticket. Just to let you know. Okay? Okay, but my real question is, right, if a Legionnaire or somebody who's renting the Legionnaire's building arrives, okay, and has a choice, if the parking places, the 14 parking places are full, and if the commuter parking lot is full, let's say it's Monday through Friday because there might be like a funeral or something like we're having some affair going on at the building, and the commuters have got it mostly full. If the parking lot, if you can't find a parking place in the commuter parking lot, and you can't find a parking place alongside the building itself, where will they park?
I think the location was designed so that happens extraordinarily infrequently. I'll ask Walter. Walter, what happens now on Pearl Street if you have a funeral repast on a Wednesday?
They park on the street and they use the meters. And if they have to walk down, they walk down from the meters. You have meters that are on Center Street that are rarely used.
And how often do you think that happens as far as, 9 to 5 during the week?
Very rarely. We had a repass today, we had 14 cars there in our parking spaces. That was it.
Just my concern is, we have all the parking lots around it, and my thought is, you can't park at the Legion, and you don't want to risk a $44 ticket, they're going to park in our lot. That's just my concern. Okay, on-site parking, okay. How safe, in your opinion, is the parking lot on Calvin Place?
The existing parking authority parking?
No, the new one's building.
Proposed. It wouldn't be on our plans if we didn't feel it was safe and
Because you didn't, with your testimony, Calvin Place is a two-way street.
Yes, I
And
testified to that.
People do park on Calvin Place. It's 2-hour parking. There's signs up there saying 2-hour parking. So when people park on Calvin Place, the road is not wide enough for two-way traffic anymore because the parking authority infringes upon Calvin Place's right-of-way. So what happens is it becomes in a one-way street instead of a two-way street. And then people start doing really strange things and stuff around there and stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that you are safe and comfortable with people.
I'm comfortable with it. I've actually sat out there and watched the traffic flow in the current condition, and you're right. They don't come back this way on Calvin. They go this direction, pull through the parking lot, and come back out over here.
How safe is the parking lot on Warnick Place?
Bless you.
It's a better condition than that's there now.
Oh, why do
I
you say
feel.
that?
Because we're providing, the cars are closer into the curb, well, the new curb line. They're not projecting as far out into the street, into the travel way.
But in order to leave, just so the Legionnaires know, when you leave that parking place, you have to back out into two-way traffic.
Correct.
And on Warnick Place, not only is it on a hill, a few of those parking places are right next to the curve of the road. And in my opinion, if you could just take an example, it's winter time, and somebody comes down Main Street, and they come down Warnick Place, and all of a sudden, the Legionnaire is backing out of Warnick Place parking place. Okay, you slam on the brakes, and I have to tell you that Warnick Place is not high priority for plowing or Calvin Place for the town, and it's usually not plowed till the end. And then you hit the brakes, and you start sliding down the hill, and wham, right into the guy backing out. I think that being parallel parked to the curb right now is much safer for the guys that pull out because they're not perpendicular to the car coming down the hill. But that's just my opinion. I just wondered your opinion.
I don't see it as an issue.
Okay. How safe is the pedestrian walkway on Calvin Place there with people driving back and forth and stuff? Section of the walkway that goes out on the road.
This section here?
Yes. Well, the section perpendicular to that, where you, suppose you parked out there, yeah, how do you get into the building, and is that safe?
You'd, just as you do it now, you'd walk down the side of the road and in.
I'm just
to the
concerned
parking
about
lot.
like the main entrance and stuff from Calvin Place. People park perpendicular, and again, I'm thinking snow and ice, tough conditions.
They'd be either on the street in front of the parking spots or behind them, or there is a little area in front of the guide rail.
That's my question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. You can ask whatever questions you like.
Does Mr. Justin want to ask all of his questions
That's what I was
now?
going to say, is you don't limit your questions to this one witness. If you have other questions, why don't you ask them all from all the professions?
Engineering.
But you could ask your, if you would like one of the other.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
You can certainly make a comment.
My comment is that I support the American Legion. My father's a World War II vet and a Korean War vet, and he's a member of this post. And my son is active duty Navy, and he's stationed with the submarine fleet up in Groton, Connecticut right now. So the American Legion is my friend. Okay, but my problem is that the place that they're proposing to put the American Legion is going to change my friend into my enemy, because I think they're going to steal our parking, either the Legionnaires who can't find a place to park or their customers who can't find a place to park. And I'm concerned about the drinking and how that's going to affect especially the tenants next door. We have First Step Counseling, which is drug rehab, and it's an alcohol rehab situation. And just talking to the owner of that this afternoon, she was saying that, you know, we don't know if we can stay as your tenant, being that we're trying to rehab people from alcohol, with alcohol being served right next door to us, because they have 4 locations with us that kind of surround that. They're right there at 15 Calvin. They have that little garage area behind it that the planner mentioned, and they use the gazebo out in the gardens. and they have another one at 9 Calvin. So they have 4 locations with us that they use. So my real problem is that the parking authority has other options, and sometimes they don't make good business decisions. Okay, this parking lot, okay, is very close to the train station. So from a business point of view, if you're the parking authority, the most valuable parking places are the parking places closest to the train. The least valuable parking places are the ones furthest away from the train. Well, today at 11 o'clock, I just went out and counted. And in our little parking lot there where they want to put the American Legion, I counted 22 cars parked, paying money to the town, and 1 vacancy, out of the total 23. And that comes out to be 96% occupancy. So this little lot that they want to give to the American Legion, you're absolutely correct, is a big sacrifice for the parking authority because it's 96% full. So then I walked down to South Main Street to the other parking lot, and there I found 22 parking places that were full and 23 parking places that were empty. And if you think about it, you know, they're 49% full down at South Main Street. They're 93% full at Warnick Place, Calvin Place, like that. So from a business point of view, if you want to be the parking authority, you want to make money, you would use your 93% full occupancy and keep that and give away your less valuable parking places. My other concern is that we just did a development last year, like I said earlier, about changing an old house into offices and putting up a parking lot, whatever. Well, our 2-family house there in the 4,000 square foot addition, we're proposing 25 parking places, and we were required to have 27. So the planning board gave us a variance for those 2 parking places, so we were 93% in compliance, 93%. This application, okay, are you ready? It has 14 parking places, there's 69 are required, they're 20% in compliance, okay? So I just kind of think it's kind of a double standard when we have 93% compliance right next door, and they move in with 20% compliance, and I just think it's a double standard. And I just wanted to say that my father, for the last 50 years, has had this vision and idea of buying up old houses in our little area and converting them into offices to preserve the old buildings, and then keeping as much of the big trees and grass and landscaping and parking lots and stuff, and hide the parking lots. But he always would tell me when I'm designing the parking lots and stuff, to make sure you have enough parking for our tenants. We always want to make sure our tenants have enough parking. So that would mean sometimes you couldn't put as big a building you want to put on or a big addition you want to put on. You always had to make sure the tenants had enough parking. And we've tried to do that. But when a neighbor moves in right next door to you and they're 55 parking places short, okay, that just brings a lot of bells in our head, and it scares us that they're going to steal our parking, because parking is one of the things that we use to rent out our offices. And another one of my father's ideas was to make it as pretty as possible for everybody to enjoy. So we have English oval flower gardens that abut this property. We have a gazebo that abuts this property. We have, in the next property over, we have ponds, we have ducks and fish and turtles, and we have an awful lot of little kids that come by. We have mothers and baby strollers, we have little kids that play catch, we have all kinds of kids that come through all the time. We have a lot of people that come through, and we try to make it really nice for our tenants, for their customers, their clients, their visitors, and children, and we try to make it really nice for anybody from the Metuchen that could find us. But I'm afraid of a bar coming next door, and the people coming out of the bar, because they're having a wedding, let's say, and let's say we're gonna go take some pictures. Well, it's not too pretty at the building we got here, even though the architect, I think the building's fine. But I mean, there's not many places to take pictures of the bride and groom. But right next door is a gazebo, and right next door is English oval flower gardens. Let's go over there. And I'm just afraid that our tenants who sit out there in our gazebo and have counseling sessions about alcohol abuse, about psychiatry, and different things, that all of a sudden some drunk people will come out from a wedding reception or whoever like that and scare our tenants away. And my fear is that drunken people will scare our tenants away, and that terrifies us, that a neighbor could chase our business away and all our customers away. And to summarize it and try to put it into a word picture, if you could just imagine that Victorian Office Rentals tried to make a little oasis in Metuchen, to make it as nice a place as we possibly could in Metuchen. And if you just picture the American Legion as a piece of pollution that's just getting put in the middle of our oasis, okay? And then every once in a while, certain times of the year, certain times, a little bit of the pollution leaks out onto our ground. And our worry and our concern is that eventually the pollution could destroy the oasis that we built. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Just 2 points clarification, if it's okay with the chairman?
Well, we have other members of the public. You can do a brief address if you'd like to, for the next members. Sure. Other members from the public, if you'd like to come up. Tell us your name and address, please.
I'm Anne-Marie Boucher. I've lived in Metuchen on Halsey Street for 38 years. I really loved it there, and I
Hold
do enjoy
on, we need for you to do a couple of things. One is, I'll have you sign in while you're speaking, if you would, and then I'm going to ask you to be sworn in, if you will. You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Thank
As
you.
I've been saying, I've been living there for 38 years. I raised my daughters there. I raised my granddaughter there. I've always loved it there. I do enjoy the Jensens. Every day I'd be over in that duck pond. I am concerned that the VFW has a liquor license. I am concerned about people that drink and make bad decisions that drive on Halsey Street. We have enough speeding with railroad people, sometimes police, or just other people, coming down there. We don't really need an area that should be allowed to have alcohol and just impede on us on Halsey Street. I would never have bought that house 38 years ago if there was a VFW or anything serving alcohol there, first of all. I know that doesn't make any difference to you, but it certainly does to me. I know people drink in their own homes, but they don't often go out and drive cars. They're right in their homes. These people are drinking. I don't know. I'm not going to say who stops whatever, but people who drink make bad decisions. And they will come onto Halsey Street, and that is a concern of mine. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
hope that you do not allow it.
Other members of the public, come forward, ma'am. And if you could just, yes, and just allow counsel swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And would you give us your name and address, please?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Monica Sosnowitz. I'm the owner of First Step Counseling that he was speaking about before at 15 Calvin and
Excuse
the
me,
other,
ma'am, could you
the other
speak?
place.
I
I'm
have
too
trouble hearing you.
short. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear
Better,
me now?
better.
I'm trying to stretch and have good posture with this. First, I want to say I feel really crummy doing this. I really thought long and hard about coming because I don't want to be that neighbor that's like, I don't want you in my backyard, but First Step has been in Metuchen. I know people here know us because I see people I know. But we'll leave confidentiality. We've been in this town for 25 years, and I love Metuchen, and we do a lot with the police and the schools and the chamber. I don't just see us as a treatment center. Every one of my staff donates their time here. We feel very much a part of this community. And unfortunately, we will have to leave that spot if a place with a bar comes in, because we can't, think about it. You can't have we're anxiety and depression, but we treat a lot of substance abusers, and I cannot have a substance abuse facility, unfortunately, next to a bar. I don't object to it. People they're adults, they have a right to drink. That's not my problem. It just doesn't fit. It's not a match. I wouldn't be able to keep my business going. I would lose a lot of referrals because people would think I was nuts having that kind of situation. I want to back up the thing. We use that area. When I say to people, oh, my place is near the duck pond, everybody knows it. It's that slice of Metuchen. Everybody's like, you're so lucky. It's like the country, so beautiful there. to turn it into something different right now, I think would be a shame, and my hope is that there's a spot where they can be and we can all be in this community together. The other thing I want you guys to, that's for us and our business. We have a lot of kids down in that area. There's the music school that's down there, there's an SAT school down there, and my business alone has a lot of adolescents and younger children that we treat. We have groups for kids as young as 4 and 5 years old that regularly come to our place. Even now, I get nervous sometimes, like when a train is letting out with what's going on with the traffic pattern down there. I am really concerned, and I think you guys really need to be concerned, all of us need to be very concerned about people. I'm not getting into drinking, driving, or whatever, but there's a reality that goes on, and I don't, it's like kind of putting a bar near a school. You know, there is a music school down there, there is an SAT school down there, and there is my facility down there. You come down there at night, it's surprisingly crowded with kids coming by, besides which there are kids coming by that are not part of us. I don't know, like they think they just hang out in the gardens, or they're not creating any problem. But I just don't think it's a great mix, and I'm hoping that there's another solution. There's always compromises where there's a good spot for these people to make to have their facility and their place, and that I would be able to stay in the community. I'm not saying this in a threatening way. It's not your problem, but I really want to be able to. So, you know, I hope you guys think about the kids, and you think about the area and what it looks like now, and let's try and, that's a great area there for Metuchen. I think it's great for the town. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other members of the public? Seeing no one else, I'm going to close the public portion. Mr. Santola, did you want to say anything in this?
Yeah, I wanted to raise a few points because my suspicion is some of the American Legion guys were begging to have somebody say something. So first of all, let me say this. The American Legion was part of the site location. They understood, they were appreciative of the fact that there would be 14 of their parking spaces that they could lease back to the parking authority. That was a number that they liked. It's fewer than the 23 spaces that are on the site now. So there'll actually be less traffic during the day from 9 to 5 when people will be coming in and out of the train station for those surrounding uses, when the American Legion facility doesn't open until 3 o'clock and there's no traffic at all. So I think to suggest somehow that there's a traffic increase that's going to have a negative effect on the kids in the neighborhood isn't really a fair argument. I think what Mr. Jessen and his dad have done in that neighborhood is great. It's hard to argue that it's not, and he's clearly raised a couple of planning issues that I'm looking forward to sitting down so we can work something out. What I don't think is entirely fair is the comparison of the percentage of parking. My understanding is that that proposal was for 4,000 square feet of office. I'm going to guess that office is from 8:30 to 6 o'clock at night when everybody is still parked in the parking lot. So naturally, an office would need to have adequate parking because there is no shared parking. To the contrary, what we've come to you to say today, and what our testimony has been consistently, is the parking variance is warranted because it's adjacent to a parking facility that just like the other operation on Pearl Street, caters to commuters, which leaves evenings and weekends wide open. And the parking authority has already acknowledged that they'll make accommodations so that whenever there is some type of happening at the Legion, which we know is 6 to 8 on Friday nights during the year, 6 to 8 parties on Saturday night during the year, and approximately 20 on a Sunday afternoon. To somehow equate an American Legion facility with a bar, to me, is the height of unfairness. What this is a community spot for gentlemen and women who've sacrificed for our country. There's a lesson to teach your kids. There's a lesson to explain to recovering alcoholics. People that have donated their time and their life to supporting all these freedoms that we have, so folks can come here tonight and say whatever they want, and say whatever they want to the mayor, and do that freely. So this is a use, to me, that fits in beautifully. It's a one-story building. It's 20 feet high. It's not some building that's out of character with the neighborhood, and it provides the type of community and spirited event that we all should want. I think every community wants an American Legion. They're not bars simply because somebody can get a drink there. And just anecdotally, I asked Walter about that last week, and he told me the night before, it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday, they get $2.50 a drink. The gross was $40. $40. So they sold 18 drinks to 7 guys or 8 guys. This isn't like people are going in and out and drinking all evening, and I think all of you who live in Metuchen know that operation. So I just want to make clear that the Legion was part of the selection process. They understand how the parking works, and frankly, they like the way the parking works. They also understand that they'll treat the neighborhood the way that anybody would want their neighbors to treat them. They look forward to being there and to working to everyone else. I understand Mr. Jessup's concern. If the duck pond's off limits to somebody who wants to take photos, then I'm sure that that's something that the Legion can put in their contracts, that please don't take photos in the gazebo, that's not our property. Those types of things I think are very fair points and can clearly be addressed. But please, when you vote on this application, do not consider it a bar. It is an American Legion facility for veterans of the United States Armed Forces.
Thank you, Mr. Santel. Okay. I'm gonna say that at this point, Mrs. Mazaway, do you have any other closing, or is your testimony complete?
Well, I think Mr. Santola pretty much covered it. What I would like to just bring home to the board is that our testimony through both our factual witnesses and our expert testimony, we think clearly proved the need for the variances and that they would not be a detriment to the board's zone plan. Also, this is, to remind the board, this is a permitted use in the zone, so we do not have to prove that it is the only or the best property to house it. It is permitted here. And otherwise, I think that Mr. Santola did a very nice job of summarizing our testimony this evening and the application for the board. We'd ask that you look favorably on our application tonight.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the board members now for further discussion or what have
I
you.
do have a question. Identification of the building as a VFW hall. How will it be identified? Will there just be a sign over?
It's American Legion.
American Legion. With a sign on the front door, and that's it? Are there going to be any other identifying characteristics to distinguish this building from any other building?
There's a sign on the Calvin Place front door, and there's also a sign on the side of the building on Warden Place.
He made a change.
Clarify? Those signs are on the plan, correct?
That's correct.
Right, okay.
And I believe the planner had suggestions for making some optical changes to those signs, but the signage was there already.
And they're on the building?
Yes.
Correct.
And the two cannons are moving, correct?
Correct.
You're going to move them. Right?
Yeah, of course we're going to move them, Mayor.
Okay. I didn't hear any discussion of a flagpole. Is there a flagpole in the property or on the property?
We had left that, there clearly will obviously be a flagpole, and whether it was in that little teardrop in the front or whether there was something that was created, I think the veterans were going to talk to some of their members, including Mr. Jessen, to see how best to do that.
Okay.
Is that right, Walter?
Would you like council to start taking a look at some of the things we discussed tonight to consolidate?
Yeah, could you give us a rundown of some of the concerns?
Okay.
Well, let's start with what we're considering. As was indicated, this is a permitted use in the zone, so you have a number of C variances, and you've gotten testimony as to, I would say, the C2 criteria, although you can certainly consider C1 as well. But the reasons, there's certainly sufficient testimony on the record upon which you could base the granting of the variances and the waivers and exceptions that have been requested. So there are a number of issues that were discussed. One of them was that if the application is granted, it will have to be conditioned upon the mayor and council's approval of the parking spaces being located partly in the right-of-way. There was one question that we never did address with the engineer was the issue of the fence that I guess we should ask her about.
I'll ask her now. Lisa, let's talk about the fence.
I spoke with the engineer's office, and it's okay, as shown with the timber guide rail. I just wanted to make sure that any other codes were all enforced once it is installed. If anything changes with grades or anything like that, sometimes that arises. I just wanted to make sure that it was out there.
Gotcha. Very good.
Okay. We'll have to add in, I think that we should add in a provision if the application is going to be approved to include that the board is aware that we're going to have the 2 cannons and a flagpole so that there isn't any question about anybody having to come back to get approval for those. Of course, compliance with the memoranda from the engineer and the planner, and the condition that they will work with the planner with respect to the appearance of the building and comply with the suggestions, work with the planner and the Legion with respect to the design of the building. And I think those are all the items that I noted that should be specifically addressed.
Okay.
Does the shade tree
I think Jim said that.
Well, the testimony was that they were going to comply. In other words, that there is not going to be a waiver granted. We can say that they'll work with the planner with respect to the location of the shade tree, but his opinion was that the shade trees, although they won't be on this lot, will be distributed elsewhere, and there won't be a need for a waiver. Is that right?
I believe if they comply with the conditions of what we approved last week, that we'll pick up those shade trees over on Pearl Street.
Right. So we're not, in other words, we're not granting a waiver for shade trees, so we don't need to list that as a waiver. But they will comply.
For shade trees, yes, but not for tree replacement, I think is the...
Okay.
Get that
With tree, right, yes, with tree replacement.
The tree replacement.
Okay.
Anything else from the board's professionals that we didn't sufficiently cover?
I think an issue came up regarding lighting, and there are 2 entries on the Wernick Place side of the building which don't have any fixtures associated, and that may be something to look at. I think Mr. Jessen brought up
And those are exits only, Mr. Constantine? No?
No, there's a bar, I mean, you could have an event in the front of the facility, and then people are coming in and out of the bar, and with the grade issue of the
I
steps
think we were
there.
going to try and sit with the parking authority, Mr. Jessen, and come up with a plan that works.
We should have that reviewed as well, though, sure, with that.
Okay, so is it safe to
Okay,
say...
so we'll add that,
work
so
with the
they'll
professionals?
revise the lighting plan, subject to the planner and the engineer's approval?
That's fine.
Okay.
What else, Jim? Is there anything else that you had? Okay.
So maybe we can have just a
If I
general...
may, there are lights on the building at each of the entrance points, so above the doors.
Yeah.
There will-
It's a building code requirement.
It's fine, I guess. I think the bottom line is you're going to work with the planner to make sure.
Yes, okay.
Lisa, was there anything else from you?
No. The one thing that they talked about was the location of the refuse area, and that's something that they would comply with, and that's something that Jim and I will look over.
Very good.
I think maybe if there was a general provision that the plans would be updated in conformance with what's been discussed tonight, and that way,
Yes.
I think it's a
We
catch-all.
put that in fairly standard, that they submit revised plans in accordance with what the resolution says and the recommendations of the engineer and the planner within 60 days.
Okay. What else, board members? I have no other questions. I'll move the application with all the considerations, variances, and conditions that our attorney has covered.
I'll second.
We have a second. Sharon, voice vote, please.
Mr. Barth?
Yes.
Mrs. Clarkson?
yes.
Mr. Leeper?
Aye.
Mayor Valhalla?
Aye.
Councilman Wallace?
I have a couple comments to make before my vote, please. Earlier on, they read some things about what the American Legion does, and I don't think they got proper recognition because they do so many other things that some of you people may not even be aware of, and they should be complimented for that. And the Monday night meeting that they mentioned in the 40s and the early 50s, I participated in that Monday night meeting that was held at the American Legion. Troop 14 met there for a lot of years, and I was in that troop. And I vote yes.
Very good.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes. The application is approved. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is a review and discussion of ordinance 2014-12, amending the land development ordinance of the Borough of Metuchen. Jim, are you going to be reviewing this?
Sure. Want to wait a minute for the...
Let's wait for the, you want me to do a recess, or? Let's, no, oh, we don't have a quorum for that, I'm sorry.
We have to keep the exhibits.
Mr. Jarmel?
Wait, they don't want to adjourn.
The marked exhibits, we have to keep. Okay, good, thank you.
Considering this recess, everybody left.
They're still alive.
I don't know, Mr. Borth, it feels like a recess to me.
Are we still on?
Do you want me to officially adjourn?
No, we didn't. No, we have to do the ordinance.
Oh, no, I'm talking about a recess, not an adjournment of the meeting.
I'll move them out if you want. I'll move them out here quickly.
Somebody's highly motivated.
Okay, so we
Leave
recessed?
them there, she'll take care of it.
No.
Thank you.
We haven't. There's rejection of the recess by one member who refuses to recess. He has a
Turn it
very,
off?
very
Is it on?
formidable... 5-minute recess. Hang in there, Mr. Borth.
I know, what are we doing? I don't want to...
I was being nice.
We recess.
We have a review of the ordinance amending the land development ordinance. Jim, are you going to walk us through that?
Sure will. This is an ordinance which actually puts in place one of the recommendations in the master plan amendment related to the downtown that the board, this board adopted as a master plan amendment on June 19th. This was introduced by the council Monday evening. I made a more complete slide presentation. We won't tonight. Effectively, this puts in place the gateway, try to read it right, the Gateway Overlay District, which would be a floating zone as a conditional use that can come down on the D1, B1, D1, B3, and B4 business districts. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things relative to that. First are the conditions, and this is on the third page. There are 4 conditions that you must meet in order for this conditional use to apply. One is you have to have a 5-acre tract area. We do allow, for the purposes of calculating that, you can cross a right-of-way. 2, we require minimum frontage of 250 feet on Middlesex Avenue on both sides of the street. So that creates the gateway, but you have to have both sides of Middlesex. Third is a supermarket shall be a required use. And the fourth is, because we do anticipate that we'll see multiple phase development, that a phasing plan is required, and that has to identify the portions of the tract that will be in the initial phase, which will be the site plan development, as well as a concept plan for the remaining parcels and some idea of sequencing. Obviously, that might change, but we're requiring that. So those are the 4 conditions. In the end, where would this apply? Effectively, it can comply on the former Stop and Shop site, combined with the Cryan site, which is about a little over 8 acres between the two. If you try to get 250 feet of frontage, you could try to assemble something between the funeral home and across the street. The assemblage would be almost impossible. So it really applies in one place where we identified it and talked about it in the master plan. That's what this puts in place. The uses bring in the same uses that are permitted in the B3, B4, and D1 districts, plus we add in the supermarket and specifically note that it can't exceed 50,000 square feet in gross floor area and can include eating, drinking, and an outdoor cafe on premises. Right now, Whole Foods is proposing something in the order of 43,000 square feet and change, plus some mezzanine space, plus I was suggesting give them a little expansion space in case they decide to add on or come in larger. And they do propose a cafe, obviously, being part of that. We've also added in a use that you don't have in these districts presently, which is retail shops and stores. We pulled all that retail back in the 80s. This is allowing the supermarket and the retail to occur as long as it occurs as part of a gateway overlay district development. And then the other thing that we have added in, no, actually apartments are permitted now in this district. We're only allowing them on the north side of Middlesex Avenue. So we've actually kind of restricted apartments just to the former Cryans tract by way of this. There would be no apartments part of the Whole Foods retail development on the south side of Middlesex. And then the other use that we added in were inns and hotels. I do think in the future, probably Whole Foods, if it comes forward and we see it and it's developed, probably creates a landmark and people will start to say, and where are you located? Across from the Whole Foods. I'm not sure there's much of a landmark that's been down at that stretch of Middlesex for some time.
Yeah.
And then last, there's some design standards, and the only ones I'll just note, again, a lot of these were either exist within the existing conditional use that we approved previously for the district at Metuchen, or are contained within the B3, B4, D1 districts. We did allow for a property line adjacent to a railroad right-of-way or utility-owned property to be reduced to a 0 side or rear setback. We do have adjacent to the former Stop and Shop assemblage or the former supermarket site assemblage over there. There's a PSE&G right-of-way. There is an easement that we approved as part of the district, so effectively they may have a building that goes right to that line. And the same thing occurs on the Cryans tract. There's a PSE&G easement that we kind of perceive as it's the raised portion of the Lehigh Valley. So that's just being efficient with respect to those. The design requirements require buildings front to the street. We also specifically do note that anything facing Middlesex Lake or Central should have facades that engage and activate the streetscape and not appear to turn the back side of the building to the street, and highlight some design techniques to do that. Again, it was in the master plan. We don't want to continue the Carvel strip and formerly the supermarket that had the blank backsides, and we're fighting to get that back. We do allow parking to be located between the front of a supermarket and the street. That's the only use that basically acknowledges that there would be a surface parking field out front. And then last, we have off-track improvements in here, which can be required, and we spent some time Monday night, I think, really talking about the complete streets and the vision that's set forth in the circulation plan element that this board adopted, trying to bring median islands and pedestrian shelter islands into Middlesex Avenue, textured crosswalks. I think from the Pearl Street application, we have a new technique to do some of that texturing. So there's a whole variety of things that would basically fall into the complete streets, pedestrian safety, enhanced, and basically trying to make the supermarket-anchored retail walkable, because that's a critical issue, and it's a critical issue for folks coming to the stroll-ins and other things. People want to have a more safe, walkable town, and so we see that as being part of it. There may also be some stormwater management improvements. In fact, that is something that Renaissance did go as far as shooting camera shots of the entire system, and there's some outline on that. So the off-track improvements will be part of any approval, and that's basically, those are the highlights. Everything is highly consistent with what you had in the master plan before you, June 19th.
Can I show, where, exactly where is Whole Foods anticipated to be located?
Think about the hardware store.
It would basically be sitting on the former Kecky properties, facing towards Middlesex Avenue. So not where the Stop and Shop used to be, but where alongside Central Avenue, basically opposite Mr. McPherson's property where we approved DeVita last month.
So to the left of the Borough Hardware and perhaps to the right of the Kecky properties.
Sitting on the Kecky properties.
Sitting right on
Basically sitting, because the wall of Whole Foods can be 10 feet from the Central Avenue curb line, based on this ordinance. So it'd be opposite, the back of Whole Foods would be opposite the back of, not opposite, but would align with the back of the former Blockbuster's DeVita building.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I just have one question. I don't know if it's for you, Jim, or our attorney. Is there any way, when you say phasing, is there any way to avoid the situation that we had now where Renaissance came in, they were approved, and that property has, you know, kind of just been there now for a long time?
Well, there really isn't if somebody decides not to proceed on an approval. And first of all, there was a lot of activity behind the scenes on utility, county, and state permitting that did occur, you know, completely out of the radar screen, but all of that was secure. And in fact, I think they're hopeful, in order to meet some of the timelines and get meet what they need to for Whole Foods, that they can basically reuse those state DOT approvals and county approvals. So they don't want to change those elements of the site plan as it touches Middlesex Lake and Central. But, you know, the other side of the way to look at that, Ellen, is, you know, that plan was conceived during the early to mid, you know, 2000s, 2002, 2006. Approval December 2007. You know, although it's painful that it didn't occur, it might have been a lot worse if they had started with steel and concrete and you were looking at a fenced-up site that was now owned by somebody else, and
Isn't there some strict requirements in the leasing to Whole Foods that they have strict deadlines that they want to see met?
I mean, I haven't seen any leases,
I haven't
but
seen the lease, but
my understanding is that there's some pretty high, tight performance deadlines, which if you move forward with this and council adopts this, there's no doubt that we're a little bit ahead of the Whole Foods timeline at this point to get them through. I mean, you would probably be seeing an application in September, where we would dedicate the September planning board meeting. Heads up, Sharon.
For Whole Foods?
For Whole Foods, yes.
This
That's-
September?
If you
Oh,
again.
that's, this is, we're talking, that's right, we're,
Was that a cheer or
That was the early start of a motion, that's what that
Okay.
was.
Yeah, we're looking at sometime in September.
we only have one meeting, so right now, what I've been working through with Renaissance is a timeline that would let them file probably early September and come into the planning board for that meeting in September. A lot happening.
Well,
All good.
indeed, indeed. So sounds like we're in need of a motion.
I move for adjournment.
No,
No, no, no, no, no, no, no, no, no, no, you gotta do this first.
I move to accept.
Second.
Accept the recommendation.
Second.
And we have a second
What
to.
we need to do is move to recommend the adoption of the ordinance. It's referred to the planning board by the governing body, so we need to move to recommend the adoption of the ordinance and indicate that the ordinance is, well, it's now consistent with the master plan as we amended it, so we can report that it's consistent with the master plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Sharon, can we have a voice vote, please?
Mr. Borth?
Yes.
Mrs. Clarkson?
Yes.
Mr. Leefried?
Aye.
Mayor Bahala?
Aye.
Ms. Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes. Okay, so moved and adopted, and then we have correspondence this evening.
Right, we can move to number 5, which is, we did receive the summons and complaint in Hay Properties legal challenge to the planning board's granting of the amended approval on the Roche property, so there's a resolution for you to authorize the defense of that lawsuit.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and we've got a second.
I think we have a question.
Yeah, was the basis for that, was the basis for a case that it was unreasonable?
Well, I mean, they've got a, I don't know, a long
Okay,
laundry
just-
list of things that they're unhappy with. I would say the
Say what you
basis
say.
is the usual basis that the board's, the allegation that the board's action is arbitrary and unreasonable.
All right.
Okay, we've got a first and a second. Sharon, can we have a voice vote, please?
Mr. Borth?
Yes.
Mrs. Clarkson?
Yes.
Mr. Leefried?
Aye.
Mayor Bahala?
Aye.
Councilman Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes. Okay, so moved. Anything else?
No.
Not, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank